All right, folks, it's yet another morning for a conversation on Homo Politicus here on Enterprise TV. I'm Cyril Abaku, and today we are having to have a conversation around one of the most pressing issues in the world at the moment. Now take this. Until the helicopter crash on Sunday that claimed the life of Iran's president, Ibrahim Raisi, the world had lost a record 26 sitting leaders in air crashes. Some of them as heads of state, others as heads of government, and of course, there was at least one United Nations Secretary General, if you remember, Dag Hammarskjöld, whose plane crashed in Africa sometime in the 1960s. But what many watchers have not been able to tell is how the tragic event will shape the geopolitics of the Middle East and perhaps by extension, the world, especially coming at a time of troubled relations between Israel and Iran on the one hand, and Israel and terror groups funded by the Iranian regime on the other hand. Well, let's head into a conversation right now. The president of Iran has died. That's plain fact. It came out this morning. He was killed in a helicopter after takeoff following a visit to Azerbaijan. World leaders have been calling to condone with the Iranian regime, while the country has already declared a 5-day mourning period to have it sink in and for them to pay their last respects to their departed leader. With me in the studio to discuss this matter is journalist and public affairs commentator Emeka Madunago. Emeka, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Yes, Emeka, the president is passed. The president is dead. How did you receive the news?
Well, it was quite shocking, full of suspense because the news started filtering in late into the night. You know, when the news broke over different networks that the the helicopter of the Iranian president was missing. That the other two helicopters had landed safely. So there was the assumption that, okay, maybe, he had to have, it was involved in an emergency landing, maybe for some reasons. But as, night gave way to day, the story began to change. There was this ray of hope because it was said that two of his aides, actually were able to make contact with Turkish rescuers. Yes, and to say, that they were. So that gave hope that there was still life on board the helicopter. But at the end of the day, sadly, everybody on board the helicopter died. My condolences to the government and people of the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Well, the first vice president of Iran, Mohammed Mobetta, looks set to be sworn in as the next president, pending elections in 50 days. But clearly, this is a time of instability in Iran, from a weakening economy to challenges with groups, with dissident groups, as well as its foreign policy in recent times. Ibrahim Raisi was the one who ordered the 300 attacks, drone and missile strikes on Israel, in the wake of a supposed attack on Israel by Israel in Syria that killed a guard and his deputy commander of the IGRC. Now, but where does this leave Iran at the moment, given its tempestuous geopolitics, Pakistan, Israel, and so on? Especially now that the groups it's funding, Hezbollah and Hamas, are under intense pressure from Israel. Where does this leave Iran in the scheme of things?
Well, I think, there have been fears that there will be a succession crisis because the late President Francis was a hardliner. So it is still an open season, to know whether his successor will pursue that same hard line. But of course, there had been pressure on Iran to soften its stance because it looked like, it was just all out to keep making enemies, to keep piling up enemies. Instead of, adopting the stance of Saudi Arabia, the rapprochement, the style of Saudi Arabia, that had actually won it, more trade deals, and made it to tweak his economy in ways that impact that brought positive results. So, but Iran, sending those drones and firing missiles at Israel was actually a very wrong move, which, of course, has spawned conspiracy theories that, maybe Israel or the United States was behind the crash. But be that as it may, as at now, there has been no word from the Iranian government about any likely instigators or causes. So
so I'll come back to the foreign policy part and the even if it's still very early in the day to begin to that part, the question of whether Israel was behind this or not. Let's come back to Iran itself. Raisi was very close to the Ayatollah, and it was being bandied actually that he could become the next Ayatollah of Iran. He was being touted as a likely successor because, of course, he's a hardliner, and before now he had been head of the judiciary. When he became president, he began to tighten morality laws. We saw the story of the 22-year-old girl that was even killed, that died. Now, assuming that the Ayatollah does not want the first vice president to succeed Raisi, and he says, step aside, let maybe the head of the judiciary or any other person come up to become president. That, of course, would be before an election or without an election, really. How far do you see the Ayatollah pushing, assuming that the dynamics were to change and he would want someone else to fill in the space for the departed president?
You see, the Ayatollah is in a tight situation.
He is.
There is immense pressure from the United States. There is some kind of subdued pressure from Russia and China not to escalate tensions in the Middle East because it will hurt everybody. So I think in terms of leadership, we are to just watch and see where the Ayatollah will swing, in what direction he will swing, so that we'll then have an idea where Iran might be headed to. But I think it's still early days for us to begin to speculate conclusively on this.
Now, when we look at the way the crash was reported by Iranian state media, they didn't even say there had been a plane crash. The first thing they reported was that the president's helicopter had landed hard. I think in foggy weather. That was what they said. It had encountered hard landing. Of course, hard landing meaning that it landed involuntarily. Okay, which means that the plane had been impacted, and that there had been an accident, really. But they did not attribute it to anything. There's this mild suspicion that they are opening up that vista in order to be able to bring in any reason in future, which may not be limited or far removed from the fact that it could have been the weather, could have been nature, it could have been just anything else, especially because Iran has very few friends in the world. So this could also have been just anybody's action against Iran. In that case, is it too early to also rule out the possibility that this could have been an externally instigated crash?
Well, say it was externally instigated. Well, it would just be a conspiracy theory that might gain a life of its own. But so far, the reactions from Iran have not pointed in that direction. Because, by the way, it wasn't in hostile territory. It wasn't, the helicopters in the convoy were not flying over hostile territory. So, could anybody have shot it down, and for what reason? So, that's why I say it's still early days to conclusively speculate on what could have caused the crash.
Well, looking at it from this point of view, the reason why external actors could have done this against Iran are really many. But whether indeed this was external action is what nobody can conclusively say for now. But let's now focus on Iran's foreign policy. Do you have any feeling that, given the state of things in Iran right now, and perhaps, because of course, with every election cycle, the Ayatollah's powers come under serious test. Yeah, it becomes tested from Ahmadinejad to Hassan Rouhani to all of them, even now to Ibrahim Raisi. You have the Rouhani was a pragmatist. Raisi is a conservative. So all these tendencies are always there. And usually we've seen the Ayatollah adopt cunning sometimes, cunning and politics to get power back before then he begins to initiate reforms. What significant change do you see Raisi's death playing in the politics of Iran post-election? Actually, how do you see this man's death affecting Iranian politics in a broader sense?
Well, I think the United States and Western powers, especially UK and France, will intensify pressure on the Iranian leadership to tone down on its rhetoric and its harsh stance towards Israel, for instance. I think there isn't so much that the Ayatollah can really do in the circumstances, because the United States and the Western powers will continue to support Israel.
But, at the time Ahmadinejad was leaving office, there was an argument. The Americans said they couldn't support either Ahmadinejad's successor.
Yeah.
Because they said both men went fundamentally different in ideology. Do you see Raisi's death creating a pathway for America or our allies to now find a candidate that they could likely support that could eventually go on to upturn the system? Is that a possibility?
The thing about Iranian politics is that there is basically ideology driven, and so the president cannot just...
Sorry, when you mean ideology driven, you mean religious ideology?
Yes, religious ideology, yes. And that council headed by the Ayatollah is very influential. Even in being influential, they are also sometimes swayed by the flow, the tide of global events. So bringing in a hardliner, yes, it is possible, but can Iran continue on that path? It's becoming more and more difficult, because why? Iran has been under debilitating sanctions for some time, and so it has hurt its economy. A lot of its people have died, and so Iran cannot just continue killing itself. You are trying to deal with Israel, trying to deal with America, but you are the one bleeding. You're engaging in self-immolation. Yes. You are stabbing yourself, and then it cannot continue that way. So I hope that the death of this President Fassi will bring about a change, in the outlook, in the ideological outlook of Iran, in such a way that it can shift a bit and then try to moderate some of its harsh views. Because look at sorry? Look at Saudi Arabia, for instance. Yes, Saudi Arabia, of course, has been relating with Israel. Some other countries like that have also toned down, it has paid off for the economy. You cannot continue hurting your economy because you just declare that Israel must never be allowed to exist. But Israel continues to exist.
I mean, one has to find this funny. Any student of history finds it funny, because Iran and Turkey were the second and third countries to recognize Israel as a state in 1948. I mean, that was, of course, when Iran was secular Iran. Now, 79 came, the revolution happened, even affected the Saudis, because, of course, the theocracy of Iran gave the Saudis some kind of fear.
Yes.
That there could be a spillover and that the House of Saud could lose its power. And so they too became what they become now today. But the argument scholars have always made is that Iran's so-called ideology that runs affairs of state is not entirely organic. At every election cycle, the moderates, the pragmatists, other tendencies always put up a strong voice, which means that even Iran's own hardline policy as a country does not rest with the people per se. It rests with the Ayatollah and his councils. All right?
That is true.
Yeah, so how do you see, when they go back to the polls now to elect a new president, do you, for once, see a case in which people's power is going to prevail?
Well, the people of Iran, if you look at certain things that happened in recent years, like the revolt by some of their women,
Yes.
You see that it is not, yes, the religious ideology is not well received by the generality of Iranians. So, like I say, Iran has to start thinking in different ways, in absolutely new, and reform-minded ways. Yes.
Exactly.
Because, take it or leave it, you cannot run a system without a robust economy. It doesn't matter how much of ideology you espouse. You must have a robust economy. Otherwise, one day everything will just come crashing down like a pack of cards. So the earlier the Ayatollah and his council, understand that the mood in the Middle East is now tending towards moderation, towards moderate ideologies, the better for them.
Yes.
The better for them. You look at Turkey. Turkey does not have a definite position.
It does not.
You see Erdogan moves this way, he moves this way, he moves this way,
and instructively
moves this way. You cannot really, and of course there have been times when he was accused, of not really coming out to give a definite position. So, and then Russia also has a role to play. Now Russia is becoming moderate. Russia is saying that is interested in negotiating with Ukraine. Now that the battle has entered a different phase, the West is saying, okay, we can fit, you can use our, you can use weapons from the West and other things to fight Russia. And then Russia knows that these kinds of things in the hands of Ukraine can actually inflict a very serious toll. And it's already inflicted. So the better thing, let's go back to the negotiating table. And there have been times that Ukraine actually called on Russia to negotiate, but the pig-headedness of Vladimir Putin, made it impossible. But now that Putin's government is actually calling for dialogue, tells you that there is a kind of tectonic shift in the foreign policy from Russia. And then concerning Iran, definitely I believe that Russia may extend that to Iran. This is not the right time for us to go all out against our enemies. We are weakened economically. The Russian economy has been weakened severely. The money that Russia has made over the years from oil and all of that, a lot of it is in the hands of the West.
They are blowing it.
It's under sanctions. And then now the West is even saying that, okay, some people are even saying that, okay, the money seized from Russia should be sent to Ukraine. Should be used to rebuild Ukraine. So who wants to, reasonably, you cannot reasonably say, oh, we'll push ahead with this. You just destroy your economy. Although there was this news some weeks ago that Russia was going to become the first indebted country to clear its debt. That Vladimir Putin was trying to do that. But of course, if the West has a significant portion of your resources and wants to use it to help Ukraine, you may pay off your debt, but you just find yourself in a situation where your economy is not improving, it's not decelerating, and it's not accelerating. You are just in a stagflation.
Yes.
You are just stuck in the middle. And how far can you go with that?
Well,
America will always help Israel, no matter whatever happens. So the point is that Iran needs to now begin to adjust its policies. Because even though with its revolutionary gas and all of that, Israel is always ready to blast them. Israel is always ready to pound them at any given point in time.
Exactly.
Interestingly, today, the International Criminal Court has issued an arrest warrant for Netanyahu, Israeli President Netanyahu, and the leader of Hamas, accusing both of them of war crimes. The ICC prosecutor, accusing both of them of war crimes. So, which is really significant. So, Iran at this point too cannot afford, more pressure.
Yes.
So, I hope that the Ayatollah and his council will now begin to adopt a moderate stance. Look at it, global politics still favors the West. No matter what anybody says. Russia and China have tried through the BRICS, to set up an alternative economic bloc. But the West has not allowed that to take root. You still have to trade with the dollar.
Yes.
Because the dollar is the most secure, most assured, and most stable global currency. Yes. So no matter how you try, okay, let's do this way. Let's use, you can't even use the Russian ruble. You can't use the Indian rupee. So at the end of the day, no matter how you try, you still get to a point where you're falling back on the US dollar. So I just hope that Iran can read the handwriting of the wall and moderate his views significantly until such a time when his economy recovers. I mean, if he can do that, get out of some of the sanctions,
yes,
and then his economy recovers significantly, then he can now maybe try again if it makes sense to them to become hardline again.
All right. To be or not to be, hardline Iran is at the tenterhooks. President Ibrahim Raisi has passed. He died in a plane crash on Sunday. And as of today, it's clear that the first vice president of Iran will be sworn in, and then in 50 days, there'll be fresh elections. Which way Iran? Hardline or moderate? That's how we can go today on Homo Politicals. Thanks for watching. My name is Cyril Abaku. Bye for now.
Enterprise TV, a tradition of truth.